We're going to continue on the agenda here. We're running a little bit late, and I'd like to introduce to you Kevin Burns, who is one of our key speakers for this morning. Kevin got started in his business at the age of 12 by breaking sales records on his Dickie D ice cream bicycle. So he was that guy running down. 5 years as a professional sports team mascot. Now, as an author and a management consultant, Kevin has become one of North America's leading authorities on management trends and building better organizations for the future. His books and his regular business media appearances have already moved thousands of people towards positive change. Now it's our turn, and please help me to welcome Kevin Burns.
All right, so my first question for everyone here today, wow, can we roll that back a little? Now are you awake? There we go. First question for everyone here today, who's afraid about hearing forest technology strategies from a mascot? Why don't you? Few of you? All right, and you should be. But you know, the first thing we're going to get you to do here today, because I know you've been sitting here already for almost an hour or so, first thing we're going to get to do is get you to put a little blood in your brain. A little simple exercise I'm going to get you to do. It's a really simple thing. It takes about 3 seconds. Hands straight out in front of you like you're sleepwalking. Please play along with me on this. At the count of 3, I want you to throw your hands over your head and as loud as you can yell, "Hey!" You ready? 1, 2, 3. Hey! See right there, that's all there is to being a mascot. Actually, father and son are standing on their front porch looking out at the west with a thunderhead rolling in from the west, and the 13-year-old son looks at his dad and says, "Dad, did you realize that cloud up there is 97% water?" The father thought, "No, I didn't realize that. Would you learn that? It's all we're taking meteorology in science class today. We learned that kind of cloud is 97% water." The father thought, now that is an interesting piece of information. And he tucked it back into his mental filing cabinet. A couple of weeks later, he's flipping through a magazine. The magazine article said a watermelon is 94% water. The father thought, now, how unfortunate for the watermelon. It missed being a cloud by just 3%. But now there's a reason I mentioned this story to you, because I really believe that if we can make a change in our own lives of just 3% on a daily basis, whether it's in business or personally, we can multiply our results exponentially down the road. But what does 3% look like? We got any golfers in the room? Show of hands if you're a golfer. All right, good. This is probably, you get an opportunity, many of you, to combine your work and golf at the same time, right? To just hit the on a 9-hole course. An improvement of 3% is consistently coming in with either a 48 or 49 for a score. That's a 3% improvement. The person who earns $30,000 a year, for every $30,000 that a person earns on an annual basis, an improvement of 3% is 46 cents more an hour. A 3% improvement. The person who's out on the street knocking on doors selling to businesses, for every $10,000 in monthly sales, an improvement of 3% is $14 more in sales a day. That's a 3% improvement. Now, if you're spending 8 hours a day on the job, an improvement of 3% is taking 15 minutes, 1 coffee break, exactly 3% of your day, to improve yourself personally and professionally, to be a better person today than you were yesterday. Now, why is that important? Because I have a simple philosophy around business and organization. The philosophy simply goes like this. Business gets better when the people in the business get better. That's it. Simple, huh? Think about this now. The business will get better when the people who are in the business will get better. This college will get better when the members of the college get better. Now think, if you were all improving, and of course that's why you're here, right? Continuing education credits. You're getting your credits, you are improving yourself. You are showing that you are a professional organization. And the more that you learn, the better the college itself gets, because the individual members of the college have improved. That being said, business gets better when the people in the business get better. So how do you explain things like the declining enrollment in membership in the organization? How do you explain that? Well, let me give you some information that can help to explain why that is happening. And a lot of it has to do with demographic market information. The first interesting piece of information is what's going to happen 3 years from now. In the year 2015, and many of you will want to write this down, in the year 2015, 75% of the workforce, people just like you, will either be over the age of 50 or under the age of 30. Think about that. 75% of the workforce will be older than 50 or younger than 30. Now, as I look around the room, I'm not seeing a lot of that under 30 demographic. Now, I'm not saying that to be flippant or to try and be funny. I'm saying that as a hard, cold dose of reality. That there are people who are coming up through NAIT, through the programs, who are not joining, not taking an active membership role, an active leadership role in the college. And yet, the college in 3 years is going to need to be reflective of the reality in the workforce. And that reality is that half of that 75% is going to be younger than 30 years of age. And as the folks at NAIT said, and Bruce pointed out earlier, that just like NAIT is taking a look at all of the courses that they offer and looking for relevance. Will the college in 3 years be relevant? Well, you have an opportunity to set that direction this afternoon, just after lunch. And it's going to take some folks with vision. It's going to take some folks who have some legs, who actually want to make a difference and see the college go where it needs to go in the future. And so what I want to talk to you about today is not about how to do that necessarily, but to change perhaps some minds that may be holding you back from embracing the whole concept of the world and the real reality of our world, which is it is changing faster than the college is changing. And so what I want to talk to you about is leadership attitude. Now, I don't talk about leadership as a management position. I believe management is a position, but leadership is an attitude. In the same way that service is an attitude, but customer service is a department. And in the same way that safety, for example, is an attitude, but occupational health and safety is a program. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's our mindset, how we approach and how we believe. Are we just going to follow along? This is what the college is doing. Yeah, I'll just vote for everything. If we make a motion, everybody votes, nobody abstains, nobody votes against. Yeah, let's just all go along with the status quo. Or do we take a leadership role and say, you know what? I have a few ideas that I'd like to share with the executive committee, and I really believe that I would like to stand for an office. That's part of leadership attitude, is understanding where we're going to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, and do the work today that needs to be done in order to be in front of the change and not constantly reacting to it. So, we're going to go through 10 leadership attitude strategies here today. And some of the stuff is going to be revolutionary, some of this is going to be fairly simple. But the only thing that you're going to need to remember out of all of this is 3 words. Now, when I give you these 3 words, if you embrace the 3 words, by the time we're done here at lunch today, they'll begin to change the way you look at the college, it'll begin to change the way you look at your work, it'll begin to change the way you look at the people who you work with. Whether it's in the field or not, whether or not they're members of the college when they should be, whether or not you choose to refuse to work with people who are not members of the college and you know they should be, whether you put your foot down and say, no, I'm a professional, you're not a member, you're not, I'm not working with you. Now those are choices that we all get to make. Choices based on values or, yeah, let's just go along with it. So that's part of it. What you're going to also notice is if you embrace these 3 words, they may even begin to change the way you handle relationships and parenting issues at home. Those 3 very, very important words are going to change your lives. This is something you're getting ready to write this down. It's 3 words, people. It's not that hard. But if you need to write it down, you fill your books. All right, here come the 3 words. And they are, trust the process. So you're going, what? Trust the process. Can you repeat that for me?
Trust the process.
Holy smokes, that was cool, Pete. Gotta tell you. You know, as a former mascot, there's a certain level of enthusiasm I'm expecting to see here today. So let's try that with some enthusiasm. Those 3 words again are?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Now, what does that mean? Well, here's what it means. It means that every decision you've ever made in your whole life, every event, every experience of your whole life has put you in this room here today. Now, some of you should be very afraid. No, seriously. From the decision, think about this, from years ago, from the decision you made to pick up your toys because you didn't like the way the neighbor kid played in the sandbox, to the decision you made to be here today, every event, decision, and experience of your whole life has put you in this room here today. And the truth is, each of us in life go through our lives based on everything that's ever happened to us in the past. Every decision, event, and experience shapes our character, shapes our personality, shapes our willingness to communicate, shapes our willingness to step forward and say, you know what, I want to be part of an organization that makes a difference. I want to be part of that difference. It shapes the way we communicate with people. It shapes the way we stand behind the things that we belong to. Everything in our lives that we do today is based on everything that's ever happened to us in the past. So with that being said, and the whole idea of continuing education is the things you learn today, you're going to be in a better position to utilize that information tomorrow. Right? That too is the process. That's why you meet here every year, is so that you can learn some new things that move you forward. So that's what I say when I'm talking about trust the process. All right, so that's the only thing you're going to need to remember, those three words, trust the process. I'm going to call on you many times to repeat those words, so be prepared. Okay, first strategy out of 10 on leadership attitude is simply this. You are responsible for your own happiness. Now, don't write that one down. I can't imagine where you've been your whole life. That one just suddenly struck me as a good idea. But we are responsible for our own happiness, and you know what? The problem is we don't believe it. None of us. And I'll prove it to you. I want everyone in the room to just cross their arms if they would. Now, when you got your arms crossed, I want you to look at the person sitting next to you and make sure they're doing it right, if at all. Lord knows we want to be right, don't we? Now, I want you to do this little exercise. It's time to cross your arms and cross them the other way. That's going to be the toughest thing you do today, by the way. That is hard, isn't it? Who thinks it feels a little weird, a little unnatural, a little uncomfortable? On a show of hands. Congratulations, it's supposed to. Now here's why. Years ago, Mark Twain said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over day in, day out, the exact same way, and expecting a different result every time. And we're all guilty of this. In fact, I'll prove it to you. You know that each person in this room has between 60 and 70,000 thoughts every single day. And some of you are looking across the table going, there's no way he has that many. But it's an average, right? 60 to 70,000 thoughts every single day. And here's the truth. We make decisions on every one of those thoughts. And I will guarantee you right now, the vast majority of the decisions we make exactly the same way. We cross our arms. We don't even think about it. In fact, I'll prove it to you. You probably get up at exactly the same time every single morning, walk into the bathroom, and brush your teeth the exact same way. Oh, some of it's just a matter of taking them out of the glass of the nightstand. But, you know, same way. If we have breakfast, we have the same breakfast every morning. We leave for work at the exact same time. We drive the same route to get to work. If we get to work at the same time, we see the same people. We do the same things. We pretty much take the same breaks during the day, go to have basically the same lunches every day, leave work at the exact same time, drive through the same stupid traffic, go home exactly at the same time. Of course, if it's Friday night, it's fish sticks night, right? Because that's what we've always done. And then we probably have the same, have the fish sticks, and we go to bed at the exact same time, we do every night. We lie in that exact same bed, looking at the exact same ceiling, and saying to ourselves, why can't my life be different? Hell, here's the clue. You need to do something different. And yet, you know what? We don't buy into that. Because a long time ago, we bought into a philosophy that said, when I find the perfect job, well, then I'll be happy. No, when I find the perfect relationship, then I'll be happy. Who's still looking? Because you're going to keep looking until you figure this one out. I'll help you, though. If we convince ourselves, no, you know what it is? When I have a lot of money, yeah, then I'll be happy. No, when I finally retire, oh, good, yes, then I'll be happy. Here's a clue. If you're 65 and not happy, you're not starting now. Oh, no. You're going to be the same miserable person you always were, just no job to go to. Because, here's what I figured out about happiness. It is not a result. It's a choice. Same choice you made to be here today. That was your choice. The choice to hold the door open for somebody as you're walking through. That's a choice. Saying good morning to somebody is a choice. You're running down to Starbucks or Tim's, grabbing yourself a coffee and asking other people in the office if they want one. That's a choice. Everything that we do in our lives is a choice. Nobody forces us to show up at work in the morning. And yet we believe that we don't have a choice. You always have a choice. Bankruptcy is always a choice. And it's a choice. It's not a result. Just like happiness, just like everything that goes on in our lives, we have a choice in the things that we do. We have a choice to want to make a difference in the college. We have a choice to look at the possibility of, bringing other organizations under an umbrella. It's a choice, right? We don't talk about it. We don't have the discussions about it. And the really good discussions, we don't ever make choices based on information. We make them based on supposition. But it's all about the choices that we have. The choice whether or not you want to stand for an elected office in the coming year. That's a choice too. Everything we do in our lives is a choice. And that includes being happy. Now, in all of the research that I did with Chanel and with Mike, one of the things that I learned about the college is that there is no happiness here. I mean, look around, right now. Just kidding. But, see, here the point is, nobody joins the college to find eternal happiness. Right? Nobody does. Nobody goes to work to find eternal happiness. That's not the way it works, because happiness is not a result, it's a choice. The choices that you make as members of the college have a ripple effect all the way down. So I would ask you to seriously consider your participation in the college and how you see it unfolding in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. And what you do today, the decision that you make today could have a huge impact on where it goes in the relevance of the college 5, 10, 15 years down the road. You are responsible for your own happiness first. Leadership strategy out of 10. If you get it, those 3 words I asked you to remember are? Oh, maybe you should have wrote it down then, huh? Try to get it. 1, 2, 3.
Trust the process.
Now, you heard in Mike's introduction, I used to be a professional sports team mascot. Let me explain to you the difference between a professional and an amateur. Bruce alluded to this earlier. Professional gets paid. Before it ends, actually. You're either the village idiot or you're not. There's no mascot school, right? So I was the marketing and advertising director for the Olds Grizzlies of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, Olds, Alberta. At that time, a town of 6,000 people, grown substantially since then. But at that time, 6,000 people. And in that town of 6,000 people, on an average game for the Olds Grizzlies Junior A Hockey Club, we were getting close to 1,000 fans for every game. Now, that's impressive. Because you know why? We had everything going for us that year. In fact, we had 34 consecutive wins at the starting gate before we had our first loss. We were 34-0 going into January before we lost our first game. That's impressive. We had the game promotions, the shoot the puck from center ice for $10,000 every game. That's impressive. Somebody had a chance to win $10,000 every game. We also had the brand new sound system installed in the arena with subwoofers under the kind that would vibrate the seats when the music played in the hopes that people would tap their feet and clap their hands. But the only thing we didn't have in Olds was noise. And here's why. Many of you will get this. It was a small town. And in a small town, one guy out of 1,000 at a hockey game decides to just arbitrarily jump up and start cheering. The other 999 people on the rink stop watching the game and he started watching Bob. And you know what happens the next morning at the co-op coffee shop? You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? Where all of the senators have gathered. Right? The guys with the yellow and green John Deere hats locked on into thinking position, solving all of the world's problems over caffeine. In fact, if you asked them today about what's going to happen on Monday, every one of them would have an opinion. And they would tell you how to solve it, right? And it's funny. But we knew that one guy out of 1,000 decides to jump up and start cheering. The senators are going to talk about this guy the next day. Bob last night, what a fool he made of himself. Now we figured it out that Bob has to do one of 2 things before people forget in an event like this. He either has to move away from Olds or die. If he dies in a small town, somebody's bringing it up at the funeral, right? So what we figured, maybe it was some kind of cheerleader to get everybody up and then everybody's fitting in. So we went to the Olds College, the agricultural college, and asked them to help us build a mascot costume. Because they have a textile merchandising department. That's what they do. They build stuff out of cloth. Anyway, they said, well, what's your budget figure? We gave them the budget figure. They said, give us 30 days. 30 days later, we went back and said, Kevin, here is your costume. Now, the name of the team was the Olds Grizzlies. What should the mascot have been? Grizzly bear. You'd think that, wouldn't you? They said, no, it really is a grizzly bear. The more I looked at it, the more it, in fact, began to look like a gopher. Not quite what we were after. You know, we made our commitment, they made their commitment, now we're stuck with the results. So now we had to find somebody to perform in the costume, because we hadn't thought that far ahead. So we went to the high school, the drama class, and asked if anybody would be willing to perform in the costume. Now, one kid at 17 stepped forward and said, I'll do it, and at 17 made the biggest mistake of his life. He told all of his buddies what he was going to be doing. Oh, yeah. Spot parents in the room. Because you know the other buddies all showed up at the hockey game knowing full well who was in the costume. He knew they knew who was in the costume. We wanted our mascot to get people up and cheering. And in fact, all he was doing was checking to see if his buddies were watching. And if they were, this is what we got. I can sense the euphoria building in this room as I'm doing that. A Walker, come on. But we had made our decision, we put up with it for a full season. Following season, during an exhibition game, I volunteered to do one game as the mascot, because I knew, as the developer of the mascot, that the perfect mascot went 110 miles an hour for 2.5 hours, pushing the envelope, getting in people's faces, getting them off their hands, getting them in the game. I knew I could do that in the town of Olds, because, well, I was from Red Deer. There's a time when anonymity works. Now, since then I've moved to Calgary, but you know, at the time I was from Red Deer. Well, I knew I was going to be expending a lot of energy that first night, and so I needed to go out and basically what I called carb up. Lots of carbohydrates, that big pre-game meal. Well, it consisted of lasagna with plenty of garlic and onions. Some of you already see where this is headed. You see, it was that first burp inside a very enclosed space. It smelled as though there had been an H2S spill in the head of this costume. Now, as fast as I can run across the arena floor, I'm going full bore, full tilt, just trying to get a little air exchange. You want to see a mascot, ever see one running at a high speed? I know he just burped. I know that. But I went out and pushed the envelope for 2.5 hours. By the way, a useful piece of information would have been, Kevin, you know, when you get expending a lot of energy in these costumes, they get up to about 165 degrees Fahrenheit inside. Now, that to me would have been useful information, but it was the little gem that was left out, and after 2.5 hours, I had lost 9 pounds. This is not a weight loss program I wish on anyone. This is hard way. In fact, when the body gets to a certain temperature, simple science takes. So you get a body, and it's in motion, it remains in motion, right? Same idea. You bring the temperature up, it does not cool down quickly, which means there's a long time in the shower, cold shower, to just try and cool down. I finally emerge after quite a long time in the shower from the dressing room to find the general manager of the team standing in the hall, leaning against the wall, looking at me like this. He said, Bob, Bernsey, we need to talk. I followed him down the hallway, opened the door to the Grizzlies office. The entire board of directors have now assembled themselves in this little tiny office, and they're all looking at the door as I walk through it exactly the same way. He says, is there a problem? You're it. I meant, what, you're the new mascot. You want to see sweat start to roll at that moment. Well, I said, you want me to do this every game? And they said, yep. Here's what we'll pay you. Oh, geez, that's different. Because I believed that if I had a lot of money, I would finally be happy. Right? Well, gave the Grizzlies 3 seasons and 38.5 pounds. Technically didn't give it to them, the 38.5 pounds. They gave it back when I left. But so, you know, after 3 years and driving into the Bermuda Triangle of winter weather, you know, that is old, right? You know that. No matter what's going on in the rest of the province, it's you just go right off the radar there. And inevitably, at least once a year, the highways get closed. They couldn't get to the game or couldn't get home from the game. and driving from, living in Sylvan Lake, Red Deer at the time, 45 minutes each way. It was a 90-minute round trip every day, 50 times a year. Yeah, that's a big commitment. I said, after 3 years, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to retire this. Oh, sorry to see you go, but we understand. When I left the team, within 2 weeks, the phone was ringing this time from the Edmonton Sled Dogs of the International Roller Hockey League. How many people remember the Sled Dogs? That would explain why they're not around anymore. It's roller hockey. What kind of blades are they on? Roller blades. So is the mascot. Didn't mention that till opening night. Oh, you guys think you face change in your industry, right? Yeah, right. Here's what I learned about change that very night. It's a very important consideration on change. We are not resistant to change as humanity. We're not. We are, however, incredibly resistant to sudden change. Big difference, isn't there? If we can see it coming, we will adapt. If we don't see it coming, we become very resistant and try to cling to our old ways as much as we possibly can. Regardless of what the rest of the world is doing, we're going to cling to the way it's always been. That's what we're safe, that's what we're familiar with, that's what we know. And we can't afford to do that because, you know what, whether we cling to our old ways or not, the world changes anyway. And it keeps changing and it doesn't wait for you to stop crying about the way it used to be. The world doesn't stop because you're whining. That's what I learned about change that night. But the games are being played at Rexall Place. At that time, Northlands Coliseum. That's a 17,500 seat facility. And the mascot is on rollerblades. There's a lot of stairs in a 17,500 seat facility, which you never really realize until you're on rollerblades. And they made the announcement, ladies and gentlemen, introducing the new mascot of the Edmonton Sled Dogs, Eddie the Sled Dog! And very polite golf applause as I skated out, put that first foot on that first step, and ever so gently moved my weight forward, only to realize the steps at Northlands are not level. They have been worn down over the years. And that's exactly where I went. All the way down to the end, crashed into the steel reinforcements holding the board, bruised 2 ribs that night, knocked the wind out of myself, laying there to eat, trying to catch my breath, turned my head. I'm getting a standing ovation. People screaming, hey, we get to see this every game! And I've always maintained Edmonton's a great hockey town, just a lousy roller hockey town. And so the team lasted 1 year, and that was it. I said, okay, good, now I'm going to take my year off. But the following game was ringing, this time from the Red Deer Rebels of the West End, who said they were changing the look of their team, going away from the black and silver rebels across the chest to the new dead cow skull thing they got going now, which has got hockey written all over it, huh? Said, we're looking, changing the look of our team. I said, oh really? Yeah, we got a new mascot too. Oh, so what's the mascot? It's a bull. Of course it is. What the hell else would it be? And what's the bull's name? Wooly Bully. Perfect. It's a good one. We want you to be him. Of course you do. Here's what we'll pay you. Holy crap, that's different. I mean, again, still believing if I had a lot of money, I would finally be happy. Well, it was the worst year in their history, the year I was their mascot. One particular game, we're down 7-1, which is not unusual that old season. 7-1 with 11 minutes left to play in the third period. We have scored 1 goal in 49 minutes. Now, the chances of mounting the 7-goal comeback in the last 11 minutes to take the game doesn't look good. Now my job as the mascot switches from getting people to cheer, because when you're down by 6, there's nothing to cheer for, to at least keeping them mildly amused, which again can be difficult when people are upset. I remember dragging my fuzzy behind up this flight of stairs. I know that sets up a visual for some of you, but 2 steps from the top, a little 2-year-old girl. Now she's in a very narrow part of an aisle. Now learn simple physics. In a big costume, in a tight space, where I seriously outweigh a child by about a 10-to-1 margin, never try to walk around a small child. Leverage is on my side. So I had to wait for her to vacate the aisle, but she didn't. She stood there looking at me exactly like this. And then she did. bunch of softies. I heard that, huh? Reach down, pick up a little girl, throws her arms around my neck, squeezes for all she's worth, and get the death grip hug as I hear the voice of her father, who says, "We have been following you for a period and a half." And for a period and a half, all she wanted was a hug. I have missed a period and a half of flipping hug in following you. Turned, looked at the clock, it read 9 minutes left to play. I said, "No, tonight, close enough to quit, time for me." Headed down to my dressing room, locked the door, sat down, took off my head. Oh, he sounds funny when I say that. But came to the second strategy on leadership attitude that I want to share with you here today instead. That no matter how difficult your life circumstances may be, how bloody, battle bruised, trampled, frustrated, disappointed, kicked around you may be, with whether it's changes in the industry, whether it's the decline in membership, whether it's not knowing where the economy's going, not knowing the future of the organization, not knowing what's going to happen in the industry, you need only remember this. You're at work. Somebody, somewhere, loves who you are, the work that you're doing, because you make a difference. Now, I don't think as professionals we're trained to think at that level. We're trained to think cerebrally. We're not trained to think that somebody loves what we do. Because that's a hard one to embrace ourselves with. But it is a determining part of leadership attitude. To understand that the contribution, not just the work that we do, but the contribution and the effort and the energy behind it, change people's belief. And we talked a little bit, we discussed it a little bit earlier today about whether or not there's enough professionalism in the profession, how do people view forest technologists. I mean, is there a changing view? Is there something that we collectively in this room can do to change that? Yeah, there is. It's all about how we conduct ourselves in the face of adversity. We see our own relevance and we do something about it. That somebody somewhere loves who you are, the work that you're doing, obviously want you to continue doing it, but the choice of whether or not you continue to do it, the way you do it, is entirely up to you. If you get that, those 3 words I asked you to remember are? Trust the process. Okay, now, 3 weeks after the events of September the 11th, I found myself on an airplane flight out of Calgary to a conference in Vancouver. Now, for 3 weeks, like the rest of us, I had listened to the media say, since 9/11, get to the airport early. Because security is like you've never seen before. It'll take you at least 2 hours to get through security. Now, be on the lookout for guys in camouflage pants and army boots, camouflage jackets, and camouflage paint on their faces, and a camouflage helmet that are carrying fully automatic weapons blending in at the airport. Well, I was a member of the media for 18 years. I know when they get worked up like that, they're pretty serious. They suggested get to the airport at least 2 hours early. So I arrived at the Calgary airport for my 11:15 flight on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And 9:03, I was through security. But you know Murphy's Law, right? You don't dare leave the boarding area now. You're in. But if you leave, that's when the lineup starts, and that's when it's going to get held up, and that's when you're going to miss your plane. So I was just looking for something to do for 2 hours in the boarding area, and I noticed a whole bunch of people milling about, like you guys are here right now, in one area of the boarding area. Way over on the other side, one fella sitting by himself. Now, he looked like he wanted to be left alone. Apparently, I am instantly attracted to those people. So I went over to the other side of the airport, and here he was wearing a dirty orange ripped t-shirt, a blue jean jacket, a pair of blue jeans, a pair of work boots with the laces undone. He had not shaved in several days, had a bushy mustache, a pair of tinted glasses, and a black tattered bald cap, simply read FDNY. I was intrigued by the hat, because every time I turned on it, just like you did for the previous 3 weeks, every picture from Ground Zero showed FDNY. Every picture from New York had somewhere had FDNY somewhere in the photo. Fire Department of New York, I was intrigued by the hat. Sat across from him, I think he was just starting to doze off. He woke awake, and I said, hey. He said, hey, I'm a professional. You don't ever try that at home. Reached up my hand and said, Kevin, he said, Larry, he said, nice hat, Larry, where'd you get it? He said, well, New York. I said, well, duh. When were you in New York? He says, I'm just on my way home. I said, oh, cool, what were you doing in New York? He said, pulling bodies out of the rubble at the World Trade Center. Gotta tell you, I normally pack my smart-ass attitude with me everywhere I go. And normally I carry it with me very close and dear to my heart, but it left the airport long before I ever did that day. A million questions went through my head at that response. And the best question I could come up with was, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, so I've been in New York City the last 2 weeks. I said, well, I don't quite follow. He says, it's a long story. I said, hey, this morning, my friend, I happen to have a little time. And he proceeded to start telling me the story. He's a firefighter at the Victoria Airport, Victoria, BC. And when the events of 9/11 happened, like every other firefighter in the world, he was glued to his TV set watching his fellow firefighters in New York City, living vicariously through them, watching them 24/7, trying to save as many lives in that first week as humanly possible. After watching it for 7 straight days, like every other firefighter did, Larry said, I couldn't take it. Came into work on the 8th day, looked at my boss, said, I think I need to take a vacation. My boss said, when? He said, right now. Do what? Larry said, that's when I outlined my plan. My boss didn't even ask another question, simply signed the paperwork and said, go do what you got to do. So I left the shop that day, and I walked over to the airport. I jumped on board an airplane, and I flew to New York City. For the last 2 weeks, I've been volunteering with New York City firefighters at Ground Zero, working 16-hour volunteer shifts a day. Wow, I can't even imagine what that was like. He said, too much carnage, too many body bags. That's what that was like. At that moment, I could see him begin to replay the videotape of everything he'd seen. Now think about it. Death and destruction, 16 hours every single day, body parts, blood, dust, mangled and crushed skulls, and everything that you would see would take an emotional toll on anybody. I'm sorry, it just would. And he began to react in the way that I would have expected. His breathing became a little shaky, his chin began to quiver, his eyes began to well up. And I gave him a moment to compose himself, and I asked the question, so out of what you've seen in the last 2 weeks, what was the toughest part? And he didn't bat an eye. I remember pulling back this big piece of concrete, there was rebar sticking out, there's a hole, I don't know, maybe the length of my arm, grabbed my flashlight, shone it down the hole, and swore at the bottom of that hole it looked to me to be the outline of a hand. So I dropped to my knees to reach to the bottom, and what I pulled out was a hand. I said, well, now that's pretty tough. He said, no, that wasn't the tough part. I held the hand in my hand. The strangest thing happened. I tried to see the hand, but I couldn't see it. I was holding it. All I kept seeing was a picture of my kids. And that's when it dawned on me that that hand probably touched the head of its only child that morning, and it never will again. Now, we've learned since then, the events of 9/11, 2,800 deaths, affected the lives of 15,000 children, sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, grandsons, granddaughters, schoolyard chums, friends of friends, friends of the family. 15,000 kids were affected in some way by the events of 9/11. I said, so what happens when you get home, Larry? He says, I hug my wife and kids. Then I think I'm going to throw a party for the guys at work. I said, a party? He goes, yeah. I learned something about, and this I thought was the most philosophical thing he said. I learned something about working with these New York City firefighters. Because these guys don't just work together. These guys don't just hang out after work together, but their lives actually depend upon each other. And I don't think my guys get the severity of that statement. But they will by the time the party's done. Because he says at that New York station house on 9/11, they lost 4 guys in 35 seconds. My guys don't get that, but they will by the time the party's done. Well, they call Larry's flight at 10 o'clock in the morning, an hour and 15 minutes before my flight. Think about it. Had I been at the airport at the normal time, an hour before my flight, never would have met Larry. You want to talk about somebody who trusted the process that day. As I watched him walk away, I was struck by the third strategy on leadership attitudes I want to share with you today. It's this. That there's a big difference between logic and conviction. Now, logic is the thing that gets us out of bed in the morning, sends us off to work, because at the end of the day, we get a paycheck. The paycheck keeps the roof over our head, car in the driveway, lights on, groceries on the table, blah, blah, blah. Logic. Conviction says, I would belong to an organization like this if I didn't have to, if I wasn't legislated to do so. I would belong to an organization like this because I believe in the values of what we do here. I believe in the professionalism that this organization exudes. I believe strongly in the college. And you know what? The only way you're going to get new members to come into this organization is by the conviction that you as existing members individually carry. If you don't have any conviction, it becomes very and readily apparent. And that's where people become attracted to organizations that have conviction. They become attracted to the people in the organization that have conviction for the organizations they belong to, and they're willing to step forward and take a leadership role. Conviction is what will sell an organization, not logic. You can't legislate idiots. Sorry, you just can't. But you can convince idiots to stop acting that way and start smartening up by the conviction by the conviction that you display. And it's all in the conviction. People are swayed more by the depths of our convictions than they ever would be the height of our logic. It's what conviction we believe about this organization is what others will believe about this organization. And you want to turn around membership in the future, dig deeper into the convictions of why you come here. That's it. There's a big difference between logic and conviction. Conviction convinces all. You get that? That third strategy on leadership attitude, those three words again are?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. All right, that was almost conviction, but I'll let that one slide. Because we're going to be tested. You will be tested. That's my fourth strategy on leadership attitude, to recognize when you are being tested. And I learned lots about being tested. I travel all over North America. I spend a lot of time in airports and airplanes and hotels. That requires me to eat out a lot. Now, I like to eat out. I think I'm pretty good at it. But you need to know I have learned some of the world's most powerful lessons about being tested while being served in restaurants. And you'll understand in a second why I've never spoken for KFC. Because while everyone else is walking in the front door of the KFC, I'm the kind of guy going around to hang out in the back of the KFC. Now here's why. Because that's where the exhaust fans are. Because there's no better smell in this world than 11 herbs and spices hitting hot grease. Who's with me on that smell? It is a good smell. And KFC in my belly goes, now. And I take that first bite. Now, while I'm sinking my teeth into that greasy, greasy morsel, I realize at that very moment exactly why I haven't eaten here in a long time. Let you sort that one through. But it was a particularly warm day in Red. 5th day in a row when I was living there. 5th day in a row, 30-plus temperatures. Now, we didn't have air conditioning in our house. The beauty of living in Alberta is you really don't need air conditioning. I mean, there's a couple of hours in the day where you can probably use it, but for the most part, we have this wonderful thing that Ontario's never heard of. It's called night. And see, when the sun goes down, so does the temperature. It doesn't go down 2 or 3 degrees like it does in Ontario. It goes down damn near freezing, depending where you are in the province. So you just open your window and put a box fan in, and in about 10 minutes your house is cooled off. You're good for another day, right? That's our air conditioning. Well, turns out I finally figured out after a few days how to get the daytime temperature of the house to actually be less than the outside temperature in the middle of the day. That took a little physics, but I figured it out. It also happened to be the same day we're having friends over for dinner. Well, we're not turning on the stove or the oven. We just got the house cooled off. We're going to go from the cool house into the air-conditioned car, down to the air-conditioned KFC, pick up the hot meal. Now, I arrive at 4 in the afternoon. I'm the only person in the restaurant. I order the mega meal, which is 17 pieces of chicken, 3 large salads, family-sized fries, and a full McCain chocolate cake. The girl behind the counter looks at me and says, "Is that to stay or to go?" Well, if you figured out my sense of humor by now, you already know that I said to stay. And here's what I also said. You know what? I don't even want it in a cheesy cardboard box. I want it all on a plate. She looked at me like I had 3 heads. But, sir, that's an awful lot of food. I said, you think? Why then did you even ask me if that was to stay or to go? It was that moment she realized she had asked me that question. Why? Because she, too, crosses her arms exactly the same way every single day, giving the same responses to the same customers. She's not engaged in what she's doing. And don't even think about laughing. And we do this all the time. Every one of us does it. There are parts of our lives that we just go through robotically and mindlessly. We don't even pay attention. We give the same responses we always give. And I watched it happen a couple of weeks later in a Wendy's restaurant in the Ottawa Valley, where I'm originally from, just outside of Ottawa. And my nephew, 11 years of age, is standing at my side. The guy in front of me is getting ready to order his meal. The girl behind the counter, God love her, her first day moving up from fry cook to the holy grail at Wendy's, the keypad. Because when you're at the keypad at Wendy's, technically, you are 1 step from management. And here's the funny thing. It's the same in every industry. There comes a certain point when you get to a certain point in the organization, the next step is management. So if we're managers, let's not be cocky about it, all right? That's just the cocky check. But she wasn't going to mess this job up. She kept looking down at the keypad as though if she looked away, somebody would swipe it out from under her. So she's looking at the keypad. She's certainly not looking at the customer. And she said, with all the courage she could muster, "Can I help you?" And he said, "I think I'll have the Caesar salad." Her response was, Caesar, where is Caesar? Oh, Caesar, what kind of dressing would you like with that? Caesar? Okay, now completely oblivious to what has just transpired, she turns to go get his meal. He turns around and look at me and complain, but he can't find me because I'm already down to one knee laughing. This is about the funniest thing I'd ever seen. He looks and goes, "It's not that hard, is it?" He stood up and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "That, my friend, is the best resume in the pile." You really have to think about that one for a second, don't you? Because you know the manager of the store had to determine the other applicants were not qualified to do this, and actually chose this one. And then, here's where it made a difference. Then he displayed his leadership ability by systematically teaching her how to check out of her convictions by giving robotic answers to every customer requirement and not being engaged with customers. See, we've got to be careful about what we think about what it is that we do and the example that we show others. They're not always in alignment. Now, I don't tell these stories like this to point out people are to pick on minimum wage people. Please don't get that idea. I tell these stories because every single one of us in this room has experienced something very similar. And I don't point these stories out to point out people are stupid. Please don't get that idea. I don't believe people are stupid. However, from time to time, people are placed on your path simply for your amusement. Now really all that is just a shifting your thinking just 3%. Because if you believe the person behind the counter today is dumber than you, well, you're going to go out of your way to prove it. And what if they're not? What if they're actually smarter than you? Can you see a frustrating day coming for you? See, but if you believe the person behind the counter today is going to provide you with some kind of an amusing story to tell, you'll go looking for that. You know something? Since I started this little experiment, in 15 years, I've yet to find a day where I didn't have some sort of an amusing story to tell. Now, I voted yesterday at the advanced poll because I'm going to be in Toronto next week. I won't be here for the election day. But as I rounded the corner where the sign said vote here, right below the vote here sign was a garbage can. No, I'm not kidding. And right behind the sign was a porta potty. I'm not kidding. I'm not making it. I wish I could. I took a picture and put it on my Facebook page. I absolutely did. And I said, garbage can or outhouse? I'm confused. Where to vote? But you know, if you go looking for this stuff, it's exactly what you're going to find. And the things that we go looking for as the college is exactly what we're going to find. So if we're believing that we're going to be the same organization that we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we're not. That's exactly what we're going to go looking for. We're going to find evidence that it exists, but is it relevant? Is it relevant in today's market? Is the one thing that we need to be relevant about is that we're going to need to continually rebranding ourselves, regrowing ourselves, reinventing ourselves to become relevant in today's marketplace. Yeah, that's going to be part of the test. And see, the biggest part of the test, and part of being tested, I believe, is our ability to speak up. Now, speaking up and being involved, that's the biggest, but that's what we owe to college. Our voice. Not just our membership fees, but our voice that goes with it. And I learned that lesson while getting on board an Air Canada flight one day. Out of Calgary to the conference in Toronto, flying to Toronto. I'm one of the last people to get on board the airplane. There's still 17 or so people standing at the boarding counter. I said to the gate attendant, "What do all these people wait for?" He says, "Sir, they're flying standby. We're just waiting to see how many seats we have." So I get on the plane. The seat in front of me in the aisle is empty. Now the standby passenger who ended up occupying that seat had to be just about the ugliest old woman I ever saw in my whole life. Not physically. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking now from, how can I put this? From an energy perspective. You know what I'm talking about? If this lady was to leave the room, she would light it up. Do you know what I'm talking about? The one with the dark cloud over the head with the thunderbolts waiting for you, buddy, to say the wrong one. A real negative. Listen, how many people ever worked with negative people? On a show of hands. Okay, if you didn't raise your hand, chances are you're it. But she's getting into the plane and she's getting ready to back herself in this little tiny seat when the flight attendant came walking up the center aisle. Well, she stopped. She jumped out of the seat and blocked the aisle for the flight attendant, up one side of her, down the other side. I don't want to fly standby. I don't want to sit in this seat. I want to sit with my husband. And I start laughing out loud. No, here's why. Because from where I'm sitting, I can still see the front door to the plane is still open. Some of you find the humor in that, don't you? Because I'm already 3.5 hours into the future. When we're descending into Toronto, we get off the plane. There's a little old man walking in the boarding area at Pearson International. And all he's saying is, now where's my wife? How come it's so darn quiet here in Toronto? I thought it was hilarious. The flight attendant, I'll give credit where credit's due, she didn't think it was hilarious. In fact, she did her best smile therapy through the whole ordeal. Now, if you've never seen smile therapy, this is exactly what it looks like. And walked away, came back a couple of minutes later carrying 2 plastic bags looking for storage space in the overhead compartment. Only space available right above this woman's head, right in front of me. As she's pushing the 2 plastic bags in the overhead compartment, she made some mistake of looking down in my direction, and I just casually commented, so are there any other old bags you'd like to stuff up there? Pretty much had the same reaction as you, actually. She leans down, put 2 hands on my shoulders, she says, thank you! Walked down to the back galley, told every other flight attendant what I had just said. And every time a flight attendant would go by, they'd stop, give me a little wink, squeeze on the shoulder. I had the best service on the Air Canada flight. Now the woman seated next to me, as soon as I made my comment, she looks at me and says, oh, so that's the kind of flight it's going to be, is it? Don't ever apologize for who you are. Never. I looked her square in the eye and went, you betcha that's the way it's going to be. She says, well, good on you. Glad to meet you. My name's Joanne. Joanne's originally from Newfoundland. She's 52 years of age, originally from Newfoundland, with thick Newfoundland accent, thick Newfoundland sense of humor. She is a lawyer for Corrections Canada. Let me explain to you the job. You're a prisoner imprisoned in this country somewhere, and you believe that you have been wrongly imprisoned. You write a lot of letters and send a lot of emails, and you talk to a lot of people about your wrongful imprisonment. Eventually somebody says, all right, fine, we'll listen to what you have to say. Well, when you get to the hearing in front of a judge, she's your lawyer. You got to have a sense of humor for that kind of work. And she did. We laughed and giggled like a couple of schoolgirls all the way to Toronto. 3.5 hours, we're descending into Pearson. I can't even sit up in my chair anymore. I'm laughed out. I got nothing left. Just a throbbing, pounding laughter headache. What little energy I had left, I turned to her and said, well, what do you think? Pretty good first date, huh? She didn't miss a beat. She goes, yeah, dinner and a movie. As we get down on the ground, getting ready to get off the plane, the flight attendant who I made the comment to is standing at the front door. She's blocking the door from me getting off the plane. She says, Mr. Burns, I will always remember this flight. And she steps forward and wraps her arms around me and gives me this big hug. Now, as I'm standing there on the plane, holding this lovely young woman in my arms, the strangest thought crossed my mind. This is Air Canada. You got to know there's got to be some kind of regulation against this. Because honestly, this is starting to look a lot like customer service. I go walking through the airport and hear Joanne come running up behind me. Kevin, she's got her hand in the briefcase, grabs a business card and hands it to me. She says, so, when you get to prison, give me a call. You're going to be tested. That's my point. And see, the test is about speaking up. You go through into an airplane 40,000 feet in a long metal tube, and you tick off the people who are in charge of your flight, you know that's rolling downhill, don't you? And you're locked in there for 4 hours, nothing you can do about it. So I figured somebody had to say something to change where we were headed. And so I just spoke up one casual thing that changed everything, except for the woman in front of me. And she just had the day she wanted to have. But that's my point. We've got to learn to speak. And in fact, I encourage you to take on my philosophy about speaking up. My philosophy is this. If you can think it, you can say it. Very nervous laughter going through the room. Okay, let me explain to you that doesn't mean I haven't been in trouble once or twice. But now here's the truth. If you're going to say something simply to be condescending, come from a place of moral superiority, to be a smartass, to try and put somebody else down, most people will take it that way. If, however, you're coming from a place of compassion, understanding, want to change a situation for the better, then most people will take it that way. There are, however, people in your lives who on a daily basis are just looking for every opportunity to be offended. And I think you should get those people out of the way about 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, just walk up to them and offend them. Now they can get on with their day. Think about the productivity that you have helped increase. Not taking that, of course, very loosely, but you get my point here, right? We can't just sit on the things that we have to say. We can't just sit on our contribution. We can't just sit on our ability to make a difference when if all we had to do was to speak up one time, that it would change the course of the conversation and change, once the course of the conversation would change, where that conversation led would change. But it's up to you to affect the change within your own college. It's your college. And it's, you know, the outside forces, the outside market forces are going to bring to bear a lot of weight on the organization in the future. And your relevance will depend on what you do in the next few years. Your level of involvement. You're going to be tested. I hope this afternoon some of you will step up to that test. If you get it, those 3 words again are?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Okay, we got a few points to go through very quickly. Fifth strategy on leadership attitude is this. We're all on this earth for a specific purpose. We're just not told what it is. Each person in this room has an individual purpose for being here on this earth, and individually couldn't tell you what it is, but collectively as humanity, I know exactly why we're here, and it's based on something I've never heard anyone on their deathbed ever say. I didn't hear anyone on their deathbed ever say, you know, I wish I'd have been just a little less successful and just a little more stupid. Never heard anybody ever say that, which leads me to believe that I believe our purpose for being here is in fact to get better. To get smarter, to get faster, to get stronger. That's why we have continuing education. That's why we have meetings like this. Is what we're intended to do, is to get better, to get faster, to get smarter, to get stronger, so that we can put ourselves in a position to do what every job really is, and that is serve. Doesn't matter that you're a forest technologist. Doesn't matter what you do. You might be an agronomist. You might be a soil technician. Something. It doesn't matter. Those are just names on a business card. The job is service. There is no job in this world that is not in service to anyone else, to someone else. Every job serves someone else. Won't we understand that, the better we're in a position to ready ourselves for what the job really is, and that's to serve. And whether you can serve in an executive capacity, whether you can serve as ambassador to the organization, whether you can serve your customers, whether you can serve your stakeholders, serve, 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 that's what you're here to do. Every one of us is here to do. I'm hopefully doing some of that right now. We're all on this earth for a purpose. I believe it's to get better so that we can serve better. If you get it, those 3 words again are?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Strategy 6 for leadership attitude is you'll never be given more than you can handle, and you can handle everything that you're given. You'll never be given more than you can handle. You can handle everything that you're given. You get that? You want evidence? Proof of that? The evidence is you're still here. You've been able to handle everything in your life so far. You've been able to handle everything that's changed in the market. You've been able to handle all the things that have happened in the past. What makes you think you can't handle what's coming in the future? Absolutely, I believe that we all need to take on the philosophy of many organizations, and many people in organizations would like to go back to the way things used to be. Those thoughts constantly cloud their mind. They'd like to go back to the way it used to be. It was less stressful back then. Well, you need to take on my philosophy about going back to the way it used to be. My philosophy is this. I have given up all hope that I will ever have a better past. You can't go back. It's from this point forward. That point's gone. This point forward. That point's gone. This point forward. That point's gone. You get what I'm saying here? It's about being in the moment. You're here at a meeting, an annual general meeting. Today, you're in the moment. What you do today will take you to where you're going to the next point. Because next year you'll say, well, that point's passed. Now from this point forward, Everything that we do, every decision we make, every involvement we take, every action that we take makes a difference, puts us on a different road. You'll never be given more than you can handle. You can handle everything that you're given. Yes, the world is changing. Yes, the marketplace is changing. Yes, there's a very good chance that the whole concept of forest technologists might be changing. That, especially the college, it might be an umbrella organization, it might be separate organizations. But whatever it is, you can handle and weather the change, whatever the changes are. But your participation will determine how those changes bear weight upon you. You get that strategy again, those three words again are
Trust the process.
Because we're all on this earth for a specific time frame. Here's strategy number 7 in leadership attitude. We're all on this earth for a specific time frame. We're not told, though, how long it is. Now, each of us in this room has a birth certificate. Not one of you has a birth certificate with an expiry date. Okay, some have a best before date, but not an expiry date. But my point is, we have been given a wonderful gift called today, and I call it a gift in the same way that Eleanor Roosevelt called it a gift. She said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today's a gift. That's why it's called the present. And I learned the giver of a gift can take it away at any time. You saw 4 of your own members that stopped getting their gifts earlier. My father, at the age of 62, stopped getting his gift due to pancreatic cancer. He was 3 years away from retirement. Some people don't make retirement. The truth is, some of you in this room won't. That's not meant to scare you. It's just a fact based on the numbers. And that is the truth. But where the organization goes will largely be determined by what happens with each of you within the organization today. You've been given a specific time frame on this earth. You've been given a wonderful gift called today. My question is, what are you going to do with the gift? You can squander it, or you can do something with it. If you get it, those three words again are?
Trust the process.
Strategy number 8 says your actions determine your outcome. Actions determine outcome. That's another nice way of saying the investment I make today gives me the results I get tomorrow. How many people agree with that statement? The investment you make today gives you the results you get tomorrow. On a show of hands. Okay, that's just about everyone. Good, good. Okay, so if that's true, that what you do today gives you what you get tomorrow, then if you have nothing today, apparently that means you did nothing yesterday. That sucks, doesn't it? Really, at the end of the day, here's the one thing that we own. Our results. And the results don't lie. The results only amplify the truth. You saw 2 graphs here earlier. One was revenue, one was membership. Those are your results. The results don't lie. They only amplify the truth. You have an opportunity to change those results when you look at the graph next year. What you do here today could largely make that change. But your actions are going to determine your outcome. Your inaction will not. What happened to our light? There it goes again. The lights went out. But what you're going to do today gives you what you get tomorrow. The actions you take here this afternoon, the decisions that you make here this afternoon will determine the outcome that you have in a year from now. Your actions determine your outcome. If you get it, those 3 words again are?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Strategy number 9 is related to strategy number 8. It says you get what you give. You get what you give. And it's a lesson I learned at the Tim Hortons drive-thru. Now, don't kid yourself. There's stuff that you learn at Tim's. Oh, yes, there is. I spent some time in the United States trying to explain to Americans the concept of Tim Hortons in Canada, but I can't. You know why? Because it's a flippin' religion here. That's why. No, I'm serious. You see it every morning. They're lined up in droves at the Church of Tim Almighty with a toonie in their hand, getting ready to toss it in the collection plate to get a double-double and a fritter. And only in Canada do we even know what any of those words mean. Toonie, double-double, fritter. You see that south of the border and then say, and don't forget to throw in a serviette. There's another word they never heard. Because you don't want to spill in the half-ton. And there's another word they never heard. Because last time you had to sop it up with your tube. And there's another word they never heard. But you left it home in the Chesterfield. And there's another word they never heard. Now look at, what are you speaking? It's Canadian. Dead sexy, eh? Well, I'm lined up the Tim Hortons drive-thru in Red Deer on the gasoline alley. You've driven past it probably yourself. Getting my double-double, get up to the window. Everybody's favorite grandma's at the window. Betty looks at the board and she says, your medium double-double, dear, that'll be $1.25. And I'm reaching into the change drawer, get the $1.25. And as I'm noticing the rear view mirror of the car behind me, the lady with a $5 bill on top of her fingers, on top of the steering wheel. I swear the Americans say, how do you know it was a 5?
Yes.
It was blue. That's a freebie. So I said, out of curiosity, she ordered a coffee too. She looks at the board. She says, yes, dear, a medium like you. I said, you know what? I'll buy that one too. For God love you, dear. Thought I was talking to Mrs. Doubtfire, right? Oh, love you. She looked a lot like Mrs. Doubtfire. And I pay the extra $1.25, pull away very slowly, and I can see Betty's arm come out of the window pointing at my car. Now, I can only surmise what was being said, but probably something along the lines of, well, that lovely, handsome young gentleman who just left his car. He just bought your coffee, dear. And I'm out on the QE2 heading for Calgary. Number 2 high. You've driven it.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta love it, don't you? The QE2, where the posted speed of 110 kilometers per hour means put each person in your car. I spend as much time looking in the rearview mirror as I do at the front windshield, because I want to see the big white Dodge Ram dually coming up behind me at 165 kilometers an hour. I don't want to be surprised, right? Be surprised and jerk the wheel. I don't want that to happen. So I spend as much time watching. I can see a car darting in and out of traffic coming up behind me. Now, a car pulls up alongside of me. Now, I'm trying to hold my lane. Now, out of the corner of my eye, I can see the driver of the car is looking at me. You know the protocol, don't you? Do not look. No. You already know it's the escaped mental patient with the stolen car, right? But I figured, this is red here. What's the worst that can happen? What? Drive by yelling? So I turned my head very slowly. It's the same one I just bought the coffee for. She's got her hand on her steering wheel, coffee cup in her hand, and she's doing this. Thank you! And she's gone! Now, I don't even know if she was going to Calgary. She probably came out on the highway, said thank you, turned around, went back to Red Deer. See, only as Canadians can we appreciate how much we'll go out of our way to say thank you. Now, I get to Calgary 75 minutes later with the same goofy grin on my face she had on her face. And I'm looking around the room, see that same goofy grin on a lot of your faces. Well, that grin cost me $1.25. That's a pretty cheap day, isn't it? Think about it. You want to have a good day at work, you give somebody else a good day. You ever come home at the end of the day and say, today I am so frustrated? I'll bet it's because today you were frustrating. That's how it works. You're going to get what you give. And so if you find yourself in some situations, whether it's at work, whether it's at the meeting here this afternoon, you find yourself being frustrated, well, you have complete control over it. You're going to get what you give. You will get out of the college what you put into the college. That's how it works. The same idea goes with happiness. It's a choice you make. You want to be happy at the end of the day, you give somebody else happiness. You will take it home in buckets full at the end of the day. Get what you give. Ninth strategy on leadership attitude. You get it, those 3 words? Tenth and final strategy, 2 words. Become unreasonable. I know some of you are thinking, wait till I get home. Well, no, here's what it become unreasonable. That means no more reasons, no more excuses, no more justifiers for what you are, where you are in your life. It's been your choice the whole way along. In fact, I checked the front desk staff. I checked in last night and asked if they had seen a white panel van pull up in front of those doors with the side doors swing open, push a body out with the hands bound behind their back, blindfold over their eyes, and a gag over their mouth, and said, no, Mr. Burns, that did not happen. I said, well, then that means you all showed up here willingly. And you do every single day, don't you? And you have people who make you feel like they were dumped out of a van. That all they do is whine, moan, and complain when they get there. Well, you can whine, moan, and complain all you want. The truth is, especially in college, an organization just as this, there is no place for whining, moaning, and complaining. Either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. And you can choose which it's going to be. No more reasons, no more excuses, no more justifiers for not being where you want it to be, where the college you want it to be, or doing the things you want to see it do, or new programs you'd like to see implemented if you don't speak up. Honest to goodness. So this afternoon, I hope that there's some lively discussion. Because, here's one of the things that I noticed that we're sitting on the table. All of these things. And they all have these cool little emblazoned, what are these called? Embossments. Somebody did all this work. It would be a shame to just have them sit on the table and not have anybody be challenged for any position. Huh? Wouldn't it? All that work for nothing. For nobody else to step forward. So you have that choice today. become unreasonable. 10th and final strategy to get at those 3 words again are?
Trust the process.
So it brings you back to strategy number 1. You are responsible for your own happiness. Funny how it goes full circle, isn't it? Question, how many people took notes? On a show of hands. Didn't have to, I have a handout. Trust the process. But we don't trust the process. And here's what, I'll prove it to you. From little time, we're little kids. Our parents tell us stuff like, you'll need to learn this now in school, but you'll probably never use it when you get older. Right? We're taught to not trust the process. My father came to Canada in 1957 from Northern Ireland. Now, I was born in 1960. Every day of my life for the first 6 years, my father missed his homeland, his 7 brothers and sisters who he left behind. The only one to come to Canada, all by himself. Now, he missed his homeland, so every day we played in our house traditional Irish folk music. Every day. Every day. 6 years. At the age of 6, I knew the words and lyrics to every Irish drinking song, fighting song, and song in favor of the IRA. No, seriously. At 6, you can imagine, at 16, having that brand new car with the big boombox stereo in the back with the windows rolled down on a July long weekend, cruising down Main Street, cranking out traditional Irish folk music. Because you know that chicks dig it when you learn how to river dance, don't they? But there's a beautiful recitation of an old poem on one of those old scratchy 33 1/3 vinyl albums. The big black CDs. Gen Y's just keeping them up there, that's all. Bridging the gap. Bridging the gap. But a beautiful recitation of an old poem called High and Low by James H. Cousins. I learned the words of this poem at the age of 6. Had no appreciation for what it meant until some 25 years later, when all the splendor, the 2 verses of this poem showed up in my head, had tremendous meaning. It showed the high points of life and the low points of life and how to recognize the difference between the two. I want to share those 2 verses with you because I hope it'll hit home for you, because you're hitting high points and low points all at the same time as part of the college. And it goes like this. He stumbled home from Clifton Fair with drunken song and cheeks aglow. Yet there was something in his air that told of kingship long ago. I turned and inly burned with grief. One so high should fall so low. But he plucked the flower, sniffed its scent, waved it toward the sunset sky, and an old sweet rapture through him went, and kindled in his bloodshot eye. I sighed and inly cried with joy that one so low should rise so high. And that's my challenge to you, is to rise high. There's much to be said about natural leaders stepping forward. Sometimes the natural leaders step forward and step right into an executive position that goes unchallenged. And as much as the right person for the job will always end up with the job, that's what I truly believe, it doesn't mean you can't challenge. And I believe that the organization should be so full of people who are willing to step forward and offer their ideas and offer their input and offer their decision-making abilities to want to better the organization, better the college for where it's about to go in a year from now, 3 years from now, when the marketplace turns drastically from a demographic perspective, and be reflective of the new young members that you hopefully will bring into the fold. Because that energy is contagious, I got to tell you. It is very contagious. And I'm starting to see a lot more organizations that are really embracing their younger members. And it's making a huge difference in what they do and how they do things and where they go. But you have the opportunity on the decisions that you will make this afternoon. I encourage you to be actively involved. And over lunch, to talk to each other about, would you put my name forward? I'd be interested in doing that. Find somebody to do that for you. That's what you are willing to do. Absolutely, we all need to be involved. All we need to do is understand that where we have been has put us exactly where we are today. And that is the process that continues to unfold. And what happens this afternoon will add to that process. So may God bless your churches. Thank you so much for inviting me. And by the way, my shameless plug is not quite as shameless. This is my book called Go Ahead, Give Me Attitude. You don't have to buy it. Everyone can get one. And you're also going to get a handout as well. And the handouts will be in the registration table. Okay, are you just going to hand these out now? Okay, good. Cool. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us today. It was very thought-provoking. Our theme for today is professionalism in forestry, and I think you touched on a lot of points that not only will resonate with us in terms of us practicing our profession, but us as individuals and our personal choices that we make in terms of being a professional. So with that, I thank you very much. And if you stick around for a couple hours after lunch, we're probably going to be able to put you in as an associate member. But thank you very much for the books. You guys can pick up the books from Myra in the corner during the lunch hour, anytime during the lunch hour here. And we'd like to also leave you with a gift of a book.
Awesome.
And this is about the history of the Forest Service, and it covers off many of the tasks and duties that we do as a profession. It goes back to the 1930s.